Judge Michael Harper stepped out one crisp morning to a nightmare. His sleek BMW was a roaring inferno, flames devouring its frame in a vicious blaze. This wasn't an accident, it was arson, orchestrated by a group of fake HOA enforcers led by Greg Sullivan, a cocky suburban bully who terrorized, extorted, and stolen homes from helpless residents, believing he was untouchable. But Greg had no idea he just targeted the wrong man. Harper wasn't just a homeowner, he was a relentless federal judge with the power to crush him. When the truth unraveled in court, the verdict was as brutal as the justice that followed. Stick around to see how Greg's empire collapsed in a blaze of his own making. The heat hit Harper like a wall. His BMW was a furnace, flames licking the hood, the windshield a molten, bubbling mess. Black smoke choked the air, reeking of charred rubber and gasoline. The fire roared, consuming leather and metal with primal hunger. Harper's grip on his doorframe tightened, his jaw clenched. This was no freak spark, this was deliberate. A crowd gawked from the street, neighbors clutching phones, filming, whispering, doing nothing. His blood boiled. Their inaction was as infuriating as the fire itself. Harper's eyes narrowed. He knew who did this, the so-called HOA enforcers. A pack of middle-aged wannabes with fake badges, cheap vests, and golf carts they treated like cop cars. For months they'd harassed him, banging on his door with clipboards, citing violations for nonsense, a fence an inch too tall, a mailbox non-compliant. There was no real HOA here, just Greg Sullivan and his goons, Dan and Mitch, inventing rules to bully the neighborhood. They'd fined people, extorted cash, and driven the vulnerable, like widows and veterans, out of their homes. Now they'd crossed the line. The flames crackled, tires popping as the car's frames sagged into a blistered ruin. Then, over the fire's hiss, Harper heard it, laughter. His head snapped toward the sound. Greg Sullivan stood across the street, beer in hand, a smug grin splitting his sunburned face. Dan and Mitch flanked him, chuckling like brainless henchmen. Greg raised his bottle, smirking. "Should have fixed that fence, Judge," he taunted. Harper didn't flinch. He stared, unblinking, his mind already sharpening like a blade. Greg had just signed his destruction. Harper wasn't your average homeowner. As a federal judge, he'd spent decades dismantling men who thought they were gods, cartel lords, corrupt CEOs, crooked senators. He'd seen killers tremble under his gavel, watched empires of lies collapse in his courtroom. Greg Sullivan, a small-time tyrant in a polyester vest, was nothing. But Harper played the long game. For a week, he worked in silence, ruthless and precise, gathering evidence to bury them. He started with the victims. Mrs. Clara Evans, an elderly widow, had been hounded with fines for unapproved garden decorations until she sold her home to Greg for pennies. Tom Bradley, a disabled vet, came back from service to find his house condemned for an overgrown lawn. Greg's crews snatched it. Sarah Gwynn, a single mom, faced slashed tires and fake eviction notices after refusing Greg's fees. Each story fueled Harper's resolve. This wasn't just harassment, it was a criminal racket. Digging deeper, Harper uncovered a paper trail of fraud. Greg's HOA fees funneled into shell companies, laundering cash through fake construction deals and property flips. Homes stolen from residents were sold at massive profits, with Greg, Dan, and Mitch pocketing the gains. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, wire transfers, forged documents. Harper had enough to not just convict them but to obliterate their lives. A week later they came for him. Greg, Dan, and Mitch rolled up in their golf carts, vests emblazoned with enforcement, clutching a fake eviction notice. Greg swaggered up Harper's driveway, waving the paper like a trophy. "You're out, Harper," he sneered. "This property's non-compliant. Vacate now." Harper stood on his porch, arms crossed, letting Greg's words hang in the air. Then he laughed, a low, chilling sound that made Greg's smirk waver. "You should have checked who you were messing with," Harper said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "The seal of the U.S. District Court gleamed in the sunlight. Greg's grin froze. He snatched the envelope, tearing it open. His face drained of color as he read federal charges, fraud, extortion, money laundering, wire fraud. The list was endless. Dan swallowed hard. Mitch stepped back, eyes wide. Harper's voice was ice. Game's over, Greg. The trial was a circus. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, cameras flashing, headlines screaming. Fake HOA scandal. The courtroom overflowed with spectators, victims, journalists, neighbors, all hungry for justice. Greg, Dan, and Mitch sat at the defense table, sweating in ill-fitting suits, their slick lawyers' confidence crumbling. Across from them, Harper was a force of nature, presenting evidence with surgical precision. Security footage played first, Greg, Dan, and Mitch in Harper's driveway at midnight, pouring gasoline, lighting the match. Their laughter echoed as the car ignited. The jury gasped. Next came audio recordings, Greg's voice snarling threats. Pay the fine, or your house burns next. Then the financials, bank statements, forged deeds, proof of millions laundered through Greg's schemes. The fake HOA wasn't a prank, it was a criminal empire. Greg unraveled. His smug facade cracked, his hands gripping the table, eyes darting to his lawyer for salvation. There was none. Dan looked sick, Mitch stared at the floor, shaking. The jury's verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. A collective gasp filled the room. Greg's mouth opened, but no words came. Dan exhaled shakily. Mitch just shut his eyes. Handcuffs clicked as guards moved in. Greg thrashed, screaming, "This is a setup! I'll appeal!" No one listened. The sentence was merciless. 25 years, no parole. Greg's assets were seized, his bank accounts frozen, his stolen properties returned to their owners. Clara Evans got her home back. Tom Bradley's house was restored. Sarah and Gwyn cried tears of relief. Greg's mansion, his proud kingdom, was auctioned off, then demolished, its rubble a symbol of his ruin. Harper stood on his porch days later, coffee in hand, watching a wrecking ball smash Greg's former home. His fence, the one Greg had obsessed over, stood tall, untouched. In his driveway gleamed a new Bentley, a deliberate flex. Justice wasn't just served, it was personal. Harper had dismantled Greg's world, brick by brick, and the neighborhood was free. But was Harper's vengeance too far? Some whispered he'd used his power to settle a personal score, bending the law to crush Greg. Others called him a hero, saving a community from predators. What do you think? Should Harper have shown mercy, or was Greg's destruction deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, let's spark a debate. And if you've ever dealt with a bully like Greg, share your story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories of justice delivered raw. Let's keep the conversation going.